Okay, this is part 17 of why what Senator Mitch McConnell said is wrong. He says we don't have a taxing problem. We don't tax too little. That's false. If you can't see the relationship here of this increase in debt and the reduction of all these taxes, income, the corporate tax, capital gains tax, the dividend tax, the state tax here, the increase in the exemptions and so forth, you must be blind. Well, listen, I was cut off short in the previous video. And my time went out before I realized it. When I was talking about the George Bush here, his false economy based on deficit spending blew up in his face before he left office and created a recession. The housing bubble burst. And the Federal Reserve came to the rescue to keep the recession from getting worse, or to help the economy recover. It began buying huge amounts of mortgage-backed securities and U.S. Treasuries. Now, this is has some benefits. You're taking these toxic bonds off the balance sheets of banks and giving them an infusion of cash to loan and invest and put it into the bank of the Federal Reserve. And by buying U.S. Treasuries off the open market, the U.S. government is paying, instead of paying interest to private investors or foreign investors, it pays interest on those bonds to the Federal Reserve. And after their operating expenses, they pay that interest to the U.S. Treasury. That's like the government paying interest to itself. Now this has some potential detrimental effects. But first, this bond buying strategy is called quantitative easing. There was 3 rounds, QE1, QE2. No, QE1, QE2, and QE3. Now we're in the Q3 phase. Back here in 2008, the Federal Reserve did not have any mortgage-backed securities on the balance sheet. It had about $800 billion worth of U.S. securities. But after these 3 rounds of quantitative easing, it now owns more than 4 trillion of these bonds. Now the question is, where did they get the money? The Federal Reserve. Well, some call it printing money, or expansion of their credit buying power based on their assets. But in reality, it is monopoly money. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that other countries are using monopoly money to expand their economy. The thing is, some of them are doing it in secret. We're doing it out in the open. Now, this is similar to people who use amphetamines or cocaine to enhance performance. If they do it sparingly, they might get away with it. But if they get addicted, after a period of time, they become a physical wreck and depressed. And that's the same way with the economy. You can't continue doing this because it creates inflation or lowers the value of the currency. Now, the last time I checked, the blended rate that we pay on the debt, that means short-term, medium-term, and long-term treasuries, bills, notes, and bonds, was 2.4%. But over the last 20 years, the average interest that we paid on debt was 5.7. Now, look at. Eventually, the Federal Reserve has to stop quantitative easing. You can't keep on doing that forever. But once they stop, they have to sell U.S. Treasuries on the open market, and they have to. Nobody's going to buy these bonds. If after 10 years, the principal has lost value, the government has to make up the difference by raising the yield, the interest that they pay on these bonds. Of course, that costs government more money to. Now look at, if we remain on the same trajectory based on our present tax structure, by 2020, that's just 6 years from now, we're going to, and that's a conservative estimate, if the interest on debt goes to 4%, that's going to cost $800 billion a year to service that debt. If the interest rate on debt goes to 5%, that's $1 trillion a year. Now, if this debit financing bubble continues, it could, in the future, explode, as bubbles do when they get larger. It's inevitable. The basis of this, or the reason for this deficit financing is that we're hoping for a robust economic growth here in the future to bring this debt down, rather than paying higher taxes now, which some economists claim that's going to reduce GDP, slow economic recovery. But you have two choices. Let this debt expand, hoping that economic growth in the future is going to be better than it is now, and that's a dangerous assumption. We've been practicing that theory now ever since Reagan was in office here, because he was practicing, he was cutting taxes here to lower, expand the economy and reduce deficits. And of course that doesn't work, that's a theory, it doesn't work. And Bush did the same thing, and we're still practicing that over here. Nobody wants to have their taxes raised. And this is the fallacy. The reason why economic growth is not going to be easier here in the future is because we are going to have a higher population, and our natural resources are going to be less because we're depleting them at a very rapid rate. Also, we're going to have the increased cost of global warming. More tornadoes, more intense hurricanes, and in a few years, rising sea levels. Another thing, the Affordable Care Act here is going to be more expensive than originally estimated. We need a national health care system, but this is not exactly the correct design, but it's a start. You can always change it. But in my opinion, it makes sense now to come to grips with this problem and raise taxes here to increase revenues. And if they're targeted correctly, they can be done without hurting the economy. Because the only reason for a nation to borrow money is if they don't have it. But I just showed you here by these charts, we do have it. Corporations, look at here. They're making money. The rich are getting richer. See here? We have the money. But Congress is not refusing to raise taxes because a significant number have signed the Northwest No Tax Increase Pledge. Now the results of this virus, it has paralyzed Congress to a great extent. It's not 100% effective. But this debt here is the results of us not being willing to face reality and raise taxes and cut spending, because we are wasting a lot of money and there's abuse and fraud in these programs. But because we have not taken responsibility for self-government and allow ourselves to be deceived by these masters of rhetoric, politicians, we have this mountain of debt which is getting higher every year because we're not paying for government expenses. And the consequence of that is, since Reagan here, from his last year in office was 1988, and I added up the cost of interest on debt for this period, and what do you think it comes to? The interest on debt from 1988 to this year, not counting this year, do you have any idea how much it is? It's $9 trillion, $11 billion. That's the additional cost of not paying for government's expenses when they incur. And the truth is, we have the money. Now, that's why I'm infuriated here. Because of the way the Congress has handled our finances. They have not been willing to take away these tax breaks and plug these loopholes because they're getting funding for the political campaigns from corporations and the very wealthy. And that's not the way a democracy is supposed to work. And the real blame is the people, because they voted these people into office. They were deceived, or they wanted tax cuts.